The grand library of Xenthis Prime hummed with harmonic resonance, its crystalline walls vibrating with the collective knowledge of 1,000 species. Dr. Elias Carter adjusted his leather satchel, an Earth relic among floating data crystals. As he stepped into the Hall of Echoes, his human footsteps made no sound against the resonant floor, already marking him as an outsider. Xenthari scholars hovered in their designated alcoves, their crystalline forms refracting light into intricate patterns. Their communication wasn't speech, not as humans understood it. It was mathematics given voice, frequencies layered into perfect harmony. Ah, the noise. Maker arrives, chimed high Resonant Veylix, his form pulsing with amused indigo ripples. The council leader's voice wasn't a sound. It was a vibration that resonated directly in Carter's bones. Carter forced a smile. I appreciate the opportunity to share human literature with the council. A younger scholar, her facets shimmering with skepticism, emitted a discordant tone. Literature? You mean random vocalizations? Laughter, or the Xenthari equivalent, rippled through the chamber, a cascade of harmonic dissonance. Carter unclasped his satchel and withdrew a worn book. This is the Iliad. An epic poem from ancient Earth. It's about war, honor, war. Veylix interrupted, his form flickering with disapproval. You reduce conflict to words. The Galactic Federation records battles in pure data streams. Every tactical decision, every energy expenditure, perfectly preserved. What can syllables add? Carter opened the book, his fingers brushing the aged paper. Data tells you what happened. Poetry tells you why it mattered. He cleared his throat and began to recite, Sing, O goddess, the anger of Achilles, son of Peleus. The Xenthari reacted immediately. Several scholars physically recoiled, their crystalline edges darkening. One emitted a shrill frequency that made Carter's teeth ache. Stop, Veylix commanded, his resonance sharp enough to vibrate the book in Carter's hands. This is chaos. No meter, no harmonic structure, just noise. Carter lowered the book. It's not meant to be harmonious, it's meant to make you feel. Feel. The younger scholar's facets flashed crimson. We are the Xenthari, we analyze, we calculate. We do not stumble through emotions like your primitive species. Carter's grip tightened on the book. Then you're missing half the universe. Veylix's form expanded slightly, a sign of rising irritation. Your arrogance is noted, Dr. Carter. The Federation granted Earth a cultural embassy out of curiosity, not respect. But this, he gestured dismissively at the book. This proves human language has no value beyond your own planet. A murmur of agreement resonated through the chamber. Carter felt the weight of their collective dismissal pressing against him. Then Veylix delivered the blow. The council will vote tomorrow. If you cannot demonstrate the worth of your so-called poetry, Earth's embassy will be revoked. Your species will lose its voice in the Federation. Carter's stomach dropped. Losing the embassy meant more than prestige. It meant Earth's interests would go unheard in galactic politics. No trade protections, no defense pacts. He met Veylix's prismatic gaze. What would convince you? Veylix pulsed with cold amusement. Show us one human poem worthy of the Grand Library. One piece that proves your words are more than primitive noise. The challenge hung in the air, vibrating with finality. Carter closed the Iliad and slid it back into his satchel. Give me 24 hours. As he turned to leave, the younger scholar emitted a mocking harmonic. Run along, noisemaker. Well be here, calculating your failure. The Hall of Echoes hummed with laughter as Carter stepped into the corridor. His human heartbeat was too loud in his ears, his breath too ragged. He activated his comlink. The signal connected to a ship orbiting Xenthis Prime, the USN Whisper of Soul. A voice answered, sharp with military precision. Voss here, Carter exhaled. Lieutenant, I need a poem that will shake the stars. Static crackled for a moment. Then, quietly, "You don't want my poems, Doctor." "I do," Carter said, staring at the mocking glow of the Grand Library behind him. "I need the one they won't forget." Another pause. Then, just before the connection cut, "Fine, but you'll regret it." The line went dead. Carter stood alone in the alien corridor, the weight of Earth's future pressing down on him, somewhere above. In the dark between stars, Lieutenant Mara Voss reached for her dog-eared notebook, and the galaxy held its breath. The comm link buzzed in Lieutenant Mara Voss's quarters, its blue light cutting through the dim glow of her poetry holograms. She reached for it with hands that still trembled sometimes, even 3 years after Proxima. The USN Whisper of Soul hummed around her, its stealth systems keeping them hidden in the asteroid belt near Xenthari space. "Voss here." The screen resolved into Dr. Elias Carter's face, his graying temples more pronounced under the alien library's harsh light. Behind him, crystalline structures pulsed in rhythmic patterns that made Mara's teeth ache. "I need your help," Carter said without preamble. His voice was calm, but his eyes darted to something off-screen. "They're about to revoke Earth's cultural embassy status." Mara leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking. The dog-eared copy of Whitman slid to the floor. "Let me guess, they called our poetry primitive noise again." "Was, high Resonant Veylix challenged me to prove human language has value." Carter's image flickered as a deep harmonic vibration shook the connection. "They want mathematical precision, perfect harmony, everything we're not." Mara's cybernetic eye, auto, focused on a stress fracture in Carter's image. "So give them Keats or Frost. They love nature imagery, right?" Carter shook his head. "I tried," they called it, childish babbling. His fingers tightened around the edge of the screen. "Mara, I need a poem that will shake the stars." The words hung between them. Mara's quarters suddenly felt too small, the names etched into her desk pressing against her palms. She'd written the silent war in blood and reactor coolant, crouched in a ruined gun turret during the siege. The USN Defiant Star had been breaking apart around her, and all she'd had was a dying Marine stylus and the inside of a ration wrapper. "I can't," she said. "Mara, that poem isn't for them." She stood abruptly, pacing the narrow space between her bunk and the wall. "It is not some cultural exhibit. It is mine." Carter's face softened. "I know what it cost you, but right now, it is the only weapon we've got." Outside her viewport, the asteroid field tumbled silently. Mara remembered the way the Vorak ships had moved through the debris at Proxima, methodical, unstoppable, like the Xenthari and their perfect harmonics. Her fingers found the transmission controls. "You'll read it exactly as written. No edits, no harmonizing." Carter nodded. The file transfer light blinked green. One poem, 317 words, every one a shard of glass. "Tell Veylix something for me," Mara said as the connection began to fade. "Anything human poetry isn't meant to be beautiful." She killed the feed. "It is meant to be true." Alone again, Mara opened the sealed compartment beneath her bunk. The ration wrapper was still there, its faded ink smeared with old blood. She traced the words she'd written that day, when the Defiant Star's hull had screamed around her and Admiral Rook's voice had crackled over the dying comms. "Hold the lines, sing if you have to." On the Whisper of Soul's bridge, Ensign Rikoff frowned at his console. "Lieutenant, we're picking up some kind of resonance wave from Xenthis Prime." Mara didn't look up from the wrapper. "Good," Rikoff hesitated. "It is fracturing their comm relays. Should we let it burn?" Mara said softly. Somewhere in the Grand Library of Xenthis Prime, Dr. Elias Carter straightened his jacket and prepared to recite a poem that had never been meant for alien ears. Mara's words waited in his pad like live ammunition. The Whisper of Soul's stealth systems hummed, a counterpoint to the coming storm. The Hall of Echoes hummed with anticipation, its curved walls pulsing in soft violet light. Dr. Elias Carter adjusted his satchel strap, feeling the weight of the data chip inside. The Xenthari High Council floated before him, their crystalline forms refracting the chamber's glow into prismatic patterns across the floor. High Resonant Veylix voice resonated through the air, each word a perfect harmonic. You claim human language has value. Softkin, prove it. Carter took a slow breath. The air tasted metallic, charged with the Xentharis energy fields. He inserted the chip into the translation node. This is the Silent War, he said. By Lieutenant Mara Voss, United Earth Stellar Navy. The first words crackled through the chamber, raw and unpolished. We did not sing as we died. The walls shuddered. A low-frequency vibration rippled through the floor. Carter kept reading, his voice steady, despite the way the air itself seemed to resist the words. No hymns for the burning, no choruses for the broken hulls. Just static, just names, just mother, and hold on and I'm sorry. A sharp ping echoed through the hall as one of the junior scholars' crystalline facets fractured. Veylix form flared crimson. Cease. This is not harmony. This is chaos. Carter didn't look up. He recited faster now, the poem's rhythm jagged, relentless. The Vorak came in perfect formation. Their weapons sang in equations. We answered in screams. Another Xenthari shuddered, its light dimming. The air thickened with dissonance, the hall's acoustics amplifying every syllable into a physical force. Carter's hands trembled, but his voice didn't waver. You want a song, here is one, the Whisper of Soul's last transmission. 174 voices, no music, just tell my daughter, just someone please, just oh God, the chamber wailed. A high-pitched feedback shriek tore through the space as the Xentharis resonance fields overloaded. Veylix form contorted, his crystalline lattice vibrating violently. Stop, you're disrupting our minds. Carter raised his voice over the cacophony. This is human poetry, not your perfect harmonics, not your sacred geometry. This is what's left when the music stops. A counselor near the back shattered. Shards of crystalline flesh clattered to the floor, their glow fading. The others recoiled, their light patterns stuttering like damaged hollows. Veylix's voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. How can you bear this? Carter finally looked up. The poem's last lines hung in the air like smoke. We are the silence after the song. Remember us? The hall of echoes went utterly still. Then, one by one, the Xenthari began to weep, their grief manifesting as discordant, shuddering chimes. Veylix's form had dulled, his edges blurred. This is not art. Carter slid the data chip back into his satchel. No, he said softly, it's a warning. The Xenthari High Council chamber pulsed with uneasy light. The crystalline beings hovered in their formation, their perfect geometric patterns, disrupted by the human's words, still vibrating through their resonance fields. High Resonant Veylix's form flickered between shades of violet and angry crimson. You claim this noise is art. Veylix's voice resonated through the chamber, each syllable mathematically precise. It lacks structure. It lacks harmony. It is chaos given sound. Dr. Elias Carter stood at the center of the amphitheater, the leather satchel at his side looking absurdly primitive against the shimmering alien architecture. He didn't flinch as the Xenthari's disapproval made the air hum. It is not meant to be beautiful, he said. It is meant to be true. A younger scholar, its crystalline form flickering with curious blue patterns, drifted forward. Then show us this truth, it chimed. What war birthed such dissonance? Carter hesitated. The Siege of Proxima wasn't just history, it was raw, bleeding memory for humanity. But the Xenthari demanded context, and Earth's cultural standing hung in the balance. He tapped his wristcom. Admiral Rook, they're ready. The holographic display at the center of the chamber flickered to life, resolving into the battle-scarred face of Admiral Kahela Rook. A jagged scar ran from her temple to her jawline, pale against her dark skin. Behind her, the bridge of the USN Defiant Star hummed with quiet activity, the names of the dead etched into the bulkhead above her station. "High Resonant Veylix," Rook said, her voice like gravel. "You wanted to understand human poetry, then you'll need to understand human war." The hologram expanded, swallowing the chamber in the black void of the Cygnus system. The Xenthari recoiled as the scene unfolded, not the clean, calculated battles of their histories, but a slaughterhouse of twisted metal and silent screams. "This was the Siege of Proxima," Rook said. 3 Vorak hive fleets against 12 human ships. They outmassed us 20-1. They outgunned us 50-1. The footage showed the USN Morningstar breaking formation, its engines flaring white, hot as it rammed a Vorak dreadnought. No elegant tactics, no retreat, just a dying ship choosing how it would kill. "You see this?" Rook pointed at the explosion blooming across the hologram. That was Captain Ileana Vasquez. Last thing she transmitted wasn't a tactical report. It was a poem. Her daughter had written it for her the night before deployment. One of the Xenthari scholars pulsed a sickly yellow. "This is not war. This is madness." Rook's smile was all teeth. "Damn right it is. The Vorak thought so too. They expected us to fight like them, disciplined, logical. But human poetry doesn't follow rules. Neither does human war." The footage shifted to a debris field, the remains of the USN Jerusalem, its hull peeled open like a gutted fish. A distorted transmission crackled through. "Any surviving units, this is Commander Hale. Reactors critical. We're loading the railguns manually. If you're hearing this, tell my wife." The transmission cut off as the ship detonated, taking 3 Vorak cruisers with it. The Xenthari's resonance fields wavered, their perfect harmonies fracturing under the weight of human desperation. Veylix's form darkened. You let this happen? You didn't retreat?" Rook leaned forward. "Retreat to where? Proxima Station had 2 million civilians, so we held the line, and when the line broke, we made new ones out of dead ships and spite." The hologram showed the final moments. The USN Defiant Star, its prow shattered, firing its last torpedo at point blank range into a Vorak hive carrier. The explosion lit up the void. "That poem you heard?" Rook said. Lieutenant Voss wrote it after picking through the wreckage. She spent 3 days listening to the black box recordings. Every last word, every scream, every prayer. She remembered them. That is human poetry. We don't sing about victory. We sing about the ones who didn't live to see it. The chamber fell silent. The Xenthari's crystals, usually humming with perfect harmony, now flickered erratically, trying and failing to process the dissonance. Veylix finally spoke, its voice uncharacteristically quiet. "You mean to tell us this atrocity is why your words lack harmony?" Carter shook his head. "No, it is why our words matter." The younger scholar drifted closer to the hologram, its crystalline form reflecting the dying ships. "And the Vorak, what became of them?" Rook's grin was cold. "We wiped out their entire fleet, took 6 more battles just like this one. Now they don't come near human space, unless they're invited." The Xenthari exchanged pulses of light, a silent, frantic debate. Their perfect understanding of the universe had just been cracked open. Veylix's voice, when it finally came, was barely a whisper. "We require time to process this." Rook nodded. "Take all the time you need. But remember, humanity doesn't write poetry to be beautiful. We write it so no one forgets." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The Xenthari's resonance fields, once so precise, now thrummed with something new, something raw, uncharted, something human. The Grand Library's walls flickered like a dying star. The Xenthari scholars floated in uneasy silence, their crystalline forms catching the shifting light of the human war footage, now playing across their sacred halls. Admiral Rook's transmission had done more than provide context. It had torn open a wound in their perfect understanding of the universe. Veylix's form pulsed with agitated hues. This cannot be accurate historical record. Your species fights without pattern, without harmony. His voice resonated through the chamber, but the usual musical undertones were gone, replaced by something jagged. Dr. Carter stood at the center of the amphitheater, Mara's poem still hanging in the air like smoke. You asked for the war behind the words. Now you're seeing it. The holograms showed the Siege of Proxima in brutal clarity. Human ships, outnumbered, outgunned, spiraling into suicide runs against Vorak dreadnoughts. No elegant formations, no mathematical precision, just desperation etched in fire and metal. A younger Xenthari scholar, her facets darkening to deep violet, drifted closer to the projection. Why do they not retreat? The tactical disadvantage is because we don't surrender. Carter's voice was quiet but carried. Not when it is home. The footage jumped to a crippled USN frigate, its hull breached, oxygen venting in frozen plumes. The final transmission crackled through the library's resonance chambers. This is Captain Ruiz, USN Jerusalem. Primary engines gone. We're loading the railguns with debris. Tell my kids. The line cut off as the ship rammed a Vorak carrier at Phi C. The explosion painted the Xenthari crystals in sudden white light. High Resonant Veylix let out a discordant chime. This is not warfare. This is noise. Carter laughed. A harsh human sound. That is exactly what Mara's poem is about. You wanted pretty words. We gave you truth. Another scene unfolded. A bunker on Proxima 3, human soldiers holding a collapsing tunnel. The helmets were cracked, their rifles overheating. One Marine was singing. Not a battle hymn, not a war chant. An old off-key lullaby. The Xenthari fractures younger scholars who had begun questioning clustered together, their crystalline structures dimming in unison. One of them, a minor resonance named Xerix, pulsed uncertainly. They sing while dying. Especially while dying, Carter said. The footage kept coming, a medic dragging a wounded comrade through plasma fire, a pilot ejecting just to draw enemy guns away from a civilian transport. 100 last stands no galactic historian had ever recorded. Veylix's form shuddered. Your species does not follow the universal laws of conflict. There is no efficiency in this. No harmony. Carter stepped forward, and for the first time, the Xenthari flinched at a human's movement. War isn't a song, Veylix. It is a scream. Xerix drifted toward the projection, her facets reflecting the burning ships. And your poetry is what is left when the screaming stops. The library's walls flickered again, but this time, human words began appearing between the Xenthari sacred texts. Names, dates, coordinates, the untidy bleeding archives of a species that refused to die quietly. Veylix let out a resonant tone, so low it vibrated the floor. You do not seek victory, you seek something else. Carter looked at the fractured reflections of Proxima's fall dancing across the crystals. We seek tomorrow. A silence deeper than space filled the hall. Then, one by one, the younger Xenthari began emitting a new frequency, a dissonant, uneven chord that made the older scholars recoil. Xerix's voice, when it came, was the first to fracture. Show us more. Veylix's crystalline form flashed warning hues. You would pollute our harmony with their chaos. Xerix didn't retreat. I would understand truth. The Grand Library's walls hummed as new footage loaded. The Battle of Cygnus Void, where Admiral Rook's fleet had broken the Vorak advance. The humans hadn't won with superior numbers or technology. They'd won by being willing to lose everything. Carter watched the Xenthari fractures absorb the images, their perfect geometric forms starting to warp at the edges. He smiled. The poem was just the beginning. The air in the Grand Library hummed with tension, the crystalline walls vibrating faintly, as the Xenthari High Council struggled to process what they had just witnessed. Dr. Elias Carter stood at the center of the Hall of Echoes, his hands clenched at his sides, the leather satchel at his hip swaying slightly. The poem, Mara's poem, had left cracks in the very structure of the chamber. Veylix's form flickered, his crystalline body refracting jagged, dissonant light. "This is not art," he hissed, his voice a discordant chime. "This is noise. Human language has no place in the harmony of the cosmos." Carter didn't flinch. "You asked for proof." That was proof. A younger Xenthari scholar, its facets darkened with something akin to unease, pulsed softly. "High resonant, the humans, words they hurt." Veylix's resonance sharpened. "Silence. Their primitive grief has no power here." Then the comms crackled to life. A voice raw, unpolished, and unmistakably human cut through the chamber. "You wanted to hear human poetry?" Every crystalline form in the room shuddered. The holographic displays flickered, then resolved into the image of Lieutenant Mara Voss, her cybernetic eye glinting coldly in the dim light of the Whisper of Souls bridge. Behind her, the sleek black hull of the stealth vessel loomed, its surface etched with lines of poetry in 100 human languages. Veylix's resonance spiked. "Who is this?" Mara's lips curled into a humorless smile. "The poet." Carter exhaled sharply. "Mara, they don't get it, Elias," she interrupted. "They think poetry is about harmony, about beauty." Her fingers tapped a command into her console. "Let me show them what it's really for." The Whisper of Souls transmitters flared to life, broadcasting directly into the Xentharis resonance channels, the same frequencies they used for their sacred songs. Mara leaned forward, her voice low, deliberate. "This is the silent war, and you're going to hear every word." She began to recite. The effect was instantaneous. The Xenthari screamed, not in anger, in pain. Mara's voice, amplified and unfiltered, tore through their crystalline networks like a blade. The poem wasn't just words, it was memory. It was the Siege of Proxima, the screams over comms, the sound of hulls buckling under Vorak artillery. It was the names of the dead, the curses of the living, the static, choked prayers of those who knew they wouldn't make it. The Grand Library's walls shattered, shards of crystalline data, storage rained down as the Xenthari writhed, their perfect forms fracturing under the weight of human grief. Veylix collapsed, his body splintering into jagged fragments, his voice a broken warble. "Stop, you're tearing us apart." Mara didn't stop. She couldn't. The poem wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to every human who had ever fought, ever bled, ever died in the dark. It was the sound of a species that refused to harmonize. A younger Xenthari scholar, its facets now webbed with cracks, reached out with trembling resonance. "Please, we didn't know, we didn't understand." Mara's voice didn't waver. "Now you do." The transmission ended. Silence. Then, one by one, the Xenthari began to reform, their crystalline bodies reassembling. But different now, etched into their facets like scars, were human words. Names, fragments of the poem they had tried to dismiss as noise. Veylix, his form still trembling, looked at Carter with something like horror. You weaponized your grief." Carter smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. "No, we just refuse to let you ignore it." Above Xenthis Prime, the Whisper of Soul hung in the void, its hull glowing faintly with the verses of the dead. Mara's voice, though silent now, echoed in the shattered halls of the Grand Library. The Xenthari would never mock human poetry again. The grand library of Xenthis Prime no longer hummed. The once perfect harmonies had fractured into jagged silence. The crystalline walls spiderwebbed with cracks where human words had struck too deep. Dr. Elias Carter stood amidst the wreckage, his leather satchel still slung over one shoulder, watching as the Xenthari High Council struggled to reform their shattered forms. Shards of their bodies littered the floor, each fragment reflecting a different moment of human suffering. The Siege of Proxima, the Battle of Cygnus Void, 1,000 unnamed conflicts the Federation had never recorded. High Resonant Veylix was the last to pull himself together. His prismatic form flickered weakly, edges blurred where Mara's poem had torn through his resonance channels. You, his voice wavered, the harmonics broken. You knew this would happen. Carter knelt, picking up a sliver of crystal. It vibrated faintly in his palm, replaying a Marine's last transmission. Tell my daughter before cutting off. No, he said softly. We hoped. Around them, the younger Xenthari scholars clustered close, their crystalline bodies now streaked with dark veins where human words had etched themselves permanently into their structures. One reached out, tracing the air where the USN Whisper of Souls transmission still lingered. This pain, it whispered, you carry it deliberately. Not just pain. Carter unclipped a small device from his belt, a data chip, old and scratched. Victory 2, defeat. Love, the stuff that doesn't fit neatly into equations. He slotted it into the library's fractured console. The walls shuddered, but this time, the resonance was different. A new voice filled the hall, not Mara's battlefield rasp, but a child's. A recording from Earth centuries old, singing a nursery rhyme as bombs fell somewhere distant. The Xenthari flinched at the dissonance, the way joy and terror tangled together in the same breath. Veylix's form darkened. This is madness. Your language has no rules. Carter laughed, sharp and human. That's the point. He gestured to the ruins around them. You wanted proof our words had value. Here it is. They broke you. Not because we're stronger, because we've had to scream louder to be heard. One of the younger scholars drifted forward, its facets now iridescent with borrowed color. Show us more. So he did. Admiral Rook transmitted the uncensored archives, not just battle logs, but letters scribbled on ration packaging, love poems scrawled on bulkheads, the last words of 1,000 ships that had died with their crews, still singing. The library's shattered walls became a mosaic of human defiance, every crack a stanza. By the third transmission, Veylix was trembling. Enough, your noise is corrosive. Too late. Mara's voice crackled through the comms, the USN Whisper of Souls still hovering invisibly above them. Her cybernetic eye gleamed on every view screen. You opened the channel. Now you get the full broadcast. The final file was the smallest. A single line written by a soldier on Mars after the first extrasolar war. The Xenthari recoiled as it hit, their perfect harmonics shattering all over again. We are the scars the universe didn't know it needed. Silence. Then one by one the scholars began to change. Their crystals reformed, but differently now, edges sharper, surfaces etched with human script. Veylix was the last holdout, his resonance fields flickering erratically as he fought the transformation. This will unmake us, he hissed. Carter shrugged. Or make you something new. He slung his satchel over his shoulder and turned to leave. Up to you. Behind him, the grand library began to sing again. But this time, the harmonies were ragged, beautiful alive. And so the galaxy learned to fear human poetry and the wars that birthed it.